Let's talk about fear. And not just like the little fear of going to the dentist or fear of getting pulled over if you're speeding. I'm talking about like ingrained, genuine fear of potentially something life altering in the future. But here's the key, the word potentially. If we spend our time being afraid of being of something that might happen in the future, what we're doing is reaching into the future and pulling that event into our present and letting it affect us today. I want to tell you about a dream that I had that really put into perspective the power of fear and how we can potentially let it go. So here's how the dream started. Is I woke up in bed in my dream. I woke up and something just felt off in my dream. I went into the bathroom, I came out and my bed was gone. Like, okay. I go upstairs, and in this dream, I was living with this roommate. And this roommate had gathered virtually everything in the house and just stacked it in the living room. And I thought, what are you doing? And as I'm looking through this chaos and confusion of just stuff stacked everywhere, I look and there's a wolf in the room, like a giant wolf just staring me down, like looking right into my soul, like that kind of thing. And my reaction in my dream was to be absolutely terrified and say, holy crap. And the reaction is, I got to get this thing out of the house, obviously, as you do. so in this dream, I was able to get up, open the door, and grab some food, and I threw it out the door, and the wolf chased it. So I slammed the door closed, deadbolted it, and I thought, whew, crisis averted. Well, no, because that wolf came back, clawed at the door, threw itself into the door. I could just hear it. And I thought, oh my God, it's going to get in. Wouldn't you know it? The wolf broke the deadbolt of this door and got back into the house. And that's for me when panic set in, because this thing was massive. I left and just ran. When I got back to the house, more chaos was ensuing. It's like there were a bunch of like big burly men in gray jumpsuits, outfits, and they were just doing like work around the house. Like some were climbing onto the roof and others were wandering around the yard. This was all still pre-sunrise, so it was dark outside. Sun hadn't come up yet. I'm coming back from this run. All of these people are just all over the place on this house, and I don't know what's going on. Like, what is happening here? As I'm going through this process and just kind of like looking around and wondering who all these people are, this like very angelic feminine figure comes walking through, and she has this basket and she's handing out these like frozen blackberry popsicles. Again, weird, right? But whatever. And she was just like had this like internal glow about her. And so she's just walking through passing this stuff out. She offers me one and I say no. Like it didn't matter to her whether anybody accepted it or not. She just kind of nodded, put it back in her basket, and just kept wandering. And I stood there and I just watched her just kind of disappear into the distance. So I turned away from her, and the wolf is back, just sitting in the driveway, just with that same intense stare looking at me. And it was then that I thought, wait a minute. This wolf doesn't want to hurt me. If it did, it would have by now. What is this? And at that point, as I had that realization, the wolf rolled over and laid on its back. And that's when I woke up. And then I spent some time journaling and processing this dream, because what was it? Well, let's talk about how that wolf could really symbolize fear in life. If we think about the chaos and confusion that was happening in this living room as the dream started, well, it's pretty simple to talk about the chaos and confusion of life, right? Because we all feel that. We all have these events that we go through that really make us be like, just builds our anxiety up, and it feels like we just don't have control of our surroundings, and fear and anxiety is a very natural response to that. And I think so is ignoring it or running away from it, or just ignoring the things that are stoking that fear in you and hoping that they go away on their own. And the more that we turn and run and try to push that fear away, the more it's going to come ravaging back at you because you haven't dealt with it. You're just trying to ignore it. You're trying to push it out. You're trying to distract it. Well, that's not going to work because it will come back. And every time it's going to come back a little more powerful than before. Now think about this like female angelic entity that walked through my dream. And for me, I interpret that as somebody who's coming into my life to offer assistance, to help me, to say, hey, have this blackberry popsicle. It's probably not a popsicle in real life, but in my dream, that's how I interpreted it. This offering of help. And what did I do in my dream? But I turned it down. I was like, no, no, I don't want this. I can handle this. Well, think about the people in your life who might be offering help to you. And it may not look traditional, it may not look like traditional help, but even if they're an ear to talk to, or somebody who you can open up to, or somebody you can go out to lunch with and just like talk about it, because there's a really good chance that the fear that's in your head is not as big of a deal as you're making it out to be. Even if you're facing something like super serious, there's a really good chance that it's not going to be as serious in life as it is in your head. So at this point, we're just making ourselves afraid of something that hasn't even happened yet. We're feeling anxiety based on our own imagination. We're just creating it for ourselves and then being more and more afraid of the things that we create. So instead of doing that, why don't you sit back and say, how do I want this situation to turn out? And then start playing that movie in your head and saying, what if it turned out as good as it possibly could? What if I experienced things that I didn't even think of? What if some miracle comes through and really like is exactly what I needed to deal with the situation? Because that's just as likely as whatever situation you're creating up here. Humans are really good at that. We can really build up situations in our head and really just stress ourselves out over something that isn't that bad. So my big takeaway from this was run from fear and it will find you again. Face the fear, accept help along the way, and it will submit to you. But turning around and coming eye to eye with that wolf, staring it down and saying, I'm not afraid, is not easy, right? And yeah, the wolf here is a metaphor, but the fear can be just as frightening. Fear and anxiety are some of the worst feelings that we can have because we can really drive ourselves crazy and just let that fear build up on our heads. And especially if we don't talk to anybody, it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger in our minds. But as soon as we put words to it, we talk about it, we address it head on instead of turning our backs from it, then we're going to say, you know what, it's not as bad as I thought it was. I can deal with it. And I know that I have this support system around me to help. So I encourage you to reach out to people, talk to people. Don't sit in fear in silence because it's only going to get bigger and bigger. And that wolf is going to keep coming back and back until you turn around and look at it. And then you're going to say, it's not as bad as I thought it was. And then it's going to get easier. I promise.